What if I told you that the reason you wake up each morning feeling like you're dragging yourself through mud, the reason every goal on your list feels like a weight rather than a promise, is not because you lack discipline or willpower or ambition, but because somewhere along the way, without even noticing it, you began living a life that was never truly yours to begin with. Not in some dramatic, stolen sense, but in the quietest, most insidious way possible. You adopted dreams that belonged to someone else's vision of who you should be. And now your soul, that deep inner knowing that cannot be fooled or bribed, simply refuses to move toward them. It sits in silent protest, and you call that resistance laziness. You call it depression. You call it a lack of motivation. But what if it's actually the most honest thing about you right now? There's a heaviness that comes with this realization, not the kind that crushes, but the kind that settles. Like dust falling after a long storm. You might be feeling it even now, that subtle recognition in your chest, a tightness or maybe a loosening, hard to say which. Your body knows things before your mind catches up. It knows when you're walking in the wrong direction, even when the path looks perfectly reasonable to everyone else. Even when you can't articulate why something feels off, there's a knowing that lives beneath language, beneath thought, in the quiet spaces between your heartbeats. Think about the last time you set a goal that excited you, really excited you. Not the kind of excitement that comes from imagining other people's approval, not the thrill of checking a box or posting an achievement, but the kind that made you feel more alive in the present moment just thinking about it. The kind that didn't need to be explained or justified. Can you remember that feeling? And now think about the goals you're carrying right now, the ones you tell yourself you should want, the ones that make perfect sense on paper. Notice the difference in your body. One opens something, the other closes it. This is not abstract. This is happening in you, right now, as a physical reality. Carl Jung spent much of his life exploring the territory between what we show the world and what we actually are beneath that showing. He called the mask we wear the persona, that carefully constructed presentation we offer to society, to our families, to ourselves in the mirror each morning. And he understood that this persona is necessary, even useful. We needed to function, to move through the world without constant friction. But he also knew that when the persona becomes so thick, so convincing, that we forget there's anything beneath it, we enter a kind of living death. We become hollow. We perform our lives rather than live them. And the unconscious, that vast inner ocean of everything we've pushed down and away, begins to speak in symptoms, in exhaustion, in numbness, in the complete absence of motivation that no amount of coffee or productivity hacks can touch. Jung talked about synchronicity, those moments when the inner and outer worlds align in ways that feel meaningful beyond mere coincidence. When you keep encountering the same idea, the same image, the same question from different sources, as if reality itself is trying to tell you something. Perhaps that's happening for you now. Perhaps you've been feeling this disconnection for a while, this sense that you're going through motions that don't belong to you, and something keeps bringing you back to this question of authenticity, of truth, of what you actually want beneath what you've been taught to want. Nothing is random. The fact that you're here, reading these words, is part of a pattern your psyche is weaving, trying to bring something unconscious into the light. In this exploration, I want to share with you several signs, several inner shifts that indicate you've been living from borrowed goals rather than your own. These aren't separate symptoms to check off a list. They're facets of the same central experience, different angles of the same truth. And as we move through them, you might find yourself remembering moments from your own life, small incidents you dismissed or didn't understand at the time. You might feel resistance. You might feel relief. Both are welcome here. Both are part of the process. Stay with this until the end, because what often feels like confusion or stagnation might actually be your psyche's way of protecting you from continuing down a path that was never meant for you. What looks like failure might be wisdom refusing to cooperate with a false life. The first thing you might notice is a peculiar kind of exhaustion that doesn't match your actual effort. You're tired, deeply tired, but when you look at what you've accomplished, it doesn't add up. You haven't been working that hard. You haven't been pushing yourself to extremes. And yet you feel depleted in a way that sleep doesn't fix. This isn't the satisfying fatigue that comes after genuine exertion towards something meaningful. This is the exhaustion of constant internal conflict, of your conscious mind pulling you in one direction while your unconscious digs its heels into the ground and refuses to move. Imagine a child being dragged through a shopping mall by a parent, their body going limp in protest, making themselves heavy. They're not being defiant in an aggressive way. They're simply making it impossible to continue without acknowledging their resistance. Your psyche does this too. When you're pursuing goals that don't align with your actual values, your actual nature, your actual soul's direction, something in you becomes heavy. It won't be rushed. It won't cooperate. And you interpret this as personal failure rather than as information. You might remember mornings when getting out of bed felt impossible, not because you were physically ill, but because the day ahead offered nothing that called to you. You'd lie there, scrolling through your phone, finding any distraction, and you'd feel guilty about it. You'd tell yourself you were being lazy. But what if, in those moments, your body was speaking a truth your mind couldn't yet admit? What if it was saying, "I will not give you energy for a life that isn't ours"? This exhaustion often comes with a particular quality of numbness. You're not exactly sad. You're not anxious in the acute sense. You're just flat. Food doesn't taste like much. Conversations feel like you're watching them from behind glass. Things that used to bring you pleasure now feel like obligations. You go through the motions because you're supposed to, because that's what responsible people do, but there's no juice in it, no aliveness. And you wonder what's wrong with you, why you can't just be grateful, why you can't just make yourself care about the things you're supposed to care about. Jung would say that this numbness is the psyche's way of withdrawing energy from the ego's false projects. The unconscious isn't trying to destroy you, it's trying to redirect you. But because you're not listening to its quiet signals, it has to speak louder, through symptoms, through the absence of vitality. It's like your inner self is on strike, refusing to participate in a life that doesn't honor what you actually are beneath all the conditioning and expectations. You might also notice that you can't seem to visualize your future with any clarity or excitement. When you try to imagine yourself 5 years from now, having achieved the goals you've set, the image is either blank or strangely hollow. You can picture the external markers, the job title, the house, the relationship status, whatever it is you think you're working toward. But when you try to feel into it, to sense what it would actually be like to live that life, there's nothing there. No warmth, no recognition. It's like looking at a photograph of someone else's life. This is different from normal uncertainty about the future. Everyone has doubts. Everyone wonders if they're on the right path. But this is deeper. This is your soul refusing to invest in a story that isn't yours. And because you can't feel the future, you can't generate motivation in the present. Motivation isn't just willpower. It's not just discipline. Real motivation comes from alignment, from the sense that what you're doing now is connected to something that matters to you at the deepest level. When that connection is absent, when you're pursuing goals that were handed to you by culture, by family, by the invisible pressures of social comparison, you're trying to run on empty, and it doesn't work. Think about the goals you've set recently. Maybe it's about career advancement, climbing a ladder that seemed like the obvious next step. Maybe it's about achieving a certain body type, a certain lifestyle, a certain level of productivity. Now ask yourself, honestly, where did this goal come from? Did it arise from within, from a genuine sense of calling or curiosity or desire? Or did it come from looking around at what other people value, what other people praise, what other people seem to have that makes them appear successful or worthy or complete? There's no judgment in this question. We all absorb goals from our environment. We're social creatures. We learn by imitation. But there comes a point in psychological development, what Jung called individuation, where we have to separate what's actually ours from what we've borrowed. We have to sort through the contents of our psyche and ask, does this belong to me? Or am I carrying it for someone else? And that process is uncomfortable because it means acknowledging that some of what we've been working toward, maybe for years, isn't actually what we want. It means facing the possibility that we've been living someone else's dream. Another sign that your goals aren't yours is the way you relate to success and failure in pursuing them. When you make progress toward a goal that's truly aligned with your inner self, there's a sense of rightness, of coming home. Even when it's difficult, even when it challenges you, there's an underlying current of yes. But when you make progress toward a borrowed goal, the feeling is different. You might feel relief that you're finally getting somewhere, or You might feel a strange emptiness, so what, that you can't quite shake. And when you fail, when you don't meet the milestone or achieve the outcome, there's often a secret relief mixed in with the disappointment. A part of you is glad you don't have to keep pretending. You might notice this in small ways. You tell yourself you're going to wake up early and work on that project, the one that's supposed to advance your career or build your business or whatever it is. The alarm goes off. You turn it off. You go back to sleep. And later, when you're awake and berating yourself for lacking discipline, there's a tiny voice underneath that feels satisfied, not in a self-destructive way, but in a protective way. Like some part of you is saying, good, we're not doing that. That's not ours. Or maybe you've noticed that you can be incredibly disciplined and motivated in certain areas of your life, the ones that genuinely matter to you, but completely unable to muster any consistency in others. You tell yourself you're lazy or broken, but actually, you're just selective. Your psyche knows the difference between what's real and what's performance, and it won't give you energy for the performance anymore. It's tired of pretending. This can be deeply confusing because we live in a culture that tells us we should be able to do anything if we just try hard enough, if we just develop the right habits, if we just push through resistance. And there's some truth to that when it comes to challenges that arise from genuine growth, from stretching into new capacities. But there's a different kind of resistance, the kind that comes from your soul saying no, and that resistance isn't meant to be overcome. It's meant to be listened to. Jung wrote about the shadow, those parts of ourselves we've disowned or rejected because they didn't fit the image we wanted to present. But there's also a kind of reverse shadow, where we claim goals and desires that aren't actually ours because we think they should be. We think wanting them makes us good, acceptable, worthy. So we paste them onto our identity and then wonder why we can't make ourselves move toward them. The energy isn't there because the genuine desire isn't there. And no amount of affirmations or vision boards or accountability groups can manufacture authentic desire. It either exists or it doesn't. You might also notice a pattern of starting things with enthusiasm and then abandoning them. You get excited about a new project, a new direction, a new version of yourself you're going to become. You buy the books, set up the systems, tell people about it. And for a few days or weeks, you're all in. But then the energy fades. The initial excitement can't sustain itself. And you're left feeling like a failure, like someone who can't finish anything, who can't commit. But what if the problem isn't your follow-through? What if the problem is that you're trying to follow through on paths that don't actually lead anywhere you want to go? There's a difference between the resistance that comes before a breakthrough and the resistance that comes from misalignment. The first kind has a quality of fear mixed with excitement. You're scared, but you also know, somewhere deep, that this matters. The second kind is just heavy, dull. There's no excitement underneath the fear. There's just a sense of obligation, of trying to make yourself into someone you're not. Think about the last thing you abandoned. Really think about it. What was the quality of your engagement with it before you stopped? Were you forcing yourself from the beginning? Or was there ever a moment of genuine interest? And when you stopped, what did you feel? Guilt and shame? Yes, probably. But underneath that, was there also relief? A sense of a burden lifting? Your psyche is always communicating with you through these subtle feelings. But we're trained to ignore them, to override them with what we think we should feel. Another dimension of this is the way you talk about your goals. Listen to your own language when you describe what you're working toward. Do you say I want, or do you say I should? Do you say I'm excited about, or do you say I need to? The words matter because they reveal the source of the motivation. When a goal is truly yours, it pulls you. You're drawn toward it. The language is active, alive. But when a goal is borrowed, you have to push yourself toward it. The language is full of obligation and external pressure. You might catch yourself saying things like, I really need to get serious about this, or I should be further along by now, or everyone else is doing this. Why can't I? These phrases are red flags. They indicate that you're measuring yourself against standards that aren't yours, that you're trying to fit into a template that doesn't match your actual shape. And your unconscious knows this. It resists not because it's lazy or self-sabotaging, but because it's trying to protect your authenticity. There's also often a quality of performance in how you relate to borrowed goals. You're very aware of how your pursuit of them looks to others. You think about how you'll explain your progress, what you'll post about it, how it will change people's perception of you. The goal itself becomes secondary to the image of yourself achieving it. And this is exhausting because you're not actually working towards something you want. You're working toward a version of yourself you think will finally be acceptable, finally be enough. Jung talked about the self with a capital S, the totality of who you are, conscious and unconscious, the center and the circumference of your being. The self has its own direction, its own wisdom, its own path. And when the ego, the conscious I that you identify with, tries to move in a direction that contradicts the self, there's conflict, internal war. The ego might have very good reasons for its goals, very logical, socially acceptable reasons. But if the self isn't on board, if those goals don't serve the deeper process of becoming who you actually are, you'll find yourself unable to move forward no matter how much you consciously want to. This isn't mystical or abstract. You can feel in your body. You can see in your patterns. You set an intention, and then you sabotage it. You make a plan, and then you forget to follow through. You commit to something, and then you find yourself doing everything but that thing. And you think there's something wrong with you, but actually, there's something right with you. Your deeper self is refusing to cooperate with a life that isn't aligned with your truth. You might also notice that you feel most alive, most energized when you're doing things that have nothing to do with your stated goals. Maybe you lose hours to a hobby that seems unproductive. Maybe you find yourself in conversations that feel meaningful but don't advance any agenda. Maybe you're drawn to learning about subjects that have no practical application to your career or your life plan. And you feel guilty about this, like you're wasting time, like you should be more focused. But what if these moments of aliveness are actually showing you where your real energy wants to go? What if they're breadcrumbs leading you back to yourself? Jung believed that the unconscious often knows our path before the conscious mind does. It speaks in symbols, in dreams, in sudden interests, and inexplicable attractions. When you find yourself repeatedly drawn to something, even if it makes no logical sense, that's worth paying attention to. Your psyche is trying to tell you something. It's trying to show you what's actually alive in you, what actually wants to be expressed or explored or developed. But if you're too busy forcing yourself toward goals that look good on paper, you'll miss these signals. You'll override them with should and practical and realistic. And in doing so, you'll cut yourself off from the source of genuine motivation. There's also the experience of comparison, which becomes particularly painful when your goals aren't truly yours. You look at other people who are achieving similar things, and instead of feeling inspired, you feel inadequate. You feel behind. You feel like something is wrong with you because they seem to want it more, to work harder, to care more. But the truth might be that they actually do want it more because for them, it's aligned. For them, it's real. And for you, it's not. You're not failing at their goal. You're succeeding at not living their life. This is a crucial distinction. When you're on your own path, other people's achievements don't diminish you. They might inspire you or teach you something, but they don't make you feel less than. But when you're trying to walk someone else's path, everyone who's further along becomes a mirror of your inadequacy. The comparison is painful because it's highlighting the fact that you're not where you're supposed to be, not in terms of progress, but in terms of direction. You're in the wrong story entirely. You might remember moments when someone's success made you feel physically ill. That tight feeling in your chest, that sinking in your stomach. You told yourself it was envy, and maybe it was, but it might also have been your body's way of saying, this isn't our race. Why are we running it? The pain of comparison often isn't about wanting what they have. It's about the cognitive dissonance of pretending to want what they have when you actually don't. Another sign is the way you procrastinate. Not just that you do it, but how you do it and what you choose instead. Procrastination gets a bad reputation, but it's often deeply intelligent. It's your psyche's way of saying, not this, not now, not like this. And if you pay attention to what you do instead of the thing you're avoiding, you'll often find clues to what actually matters to you. Maybe you're supposed to be working on a business plan, but instead you find yourself researching something completely unrelated, something that fascinates you but seems impractical. Maybe you're supposed to be at the gym, but instead you're writing in your journal or having a long conversation with a friend. Maybe you're supposed to be networking, but instead you're taking a walk in nature. These aren't random acts of self-sabotage. They're your psyche's way of redirecting energy toward what's actually nourishing, what's actually real for you. The problem is that we've been taught to see procrastination as purely negative, as something to overcome. And sometimes it is. Sometimes we're avoiding legitimate growth because it's uncomfortable. But other times, we're avoiding false goals because they're misaligned. And learning to tell the difference requires a level of self-honesty that our culture doesn't really encourage. It requires sitting with yourself and asking not, how do I make myself do this? But do I actually want to do this? Is this actually mine? There's also a particular kind of anxiety that comes with borrowed goals. It's not the anxiety of challenge or risk. It's the anxiety of inauthenticity. You feel like a fraud, like you're pretending, like at any moment someone will see through you. And this makes sense because you are pretending, not in a malicious way, but in a survival way. You're pretending to want what you think you should want. You're pretending to be working toward a life that looks right from the outside. And some part of you knows it's a performance, and that knowing creates a constant low-level dread. This fraud feeling doesn't go away with achievement. That's the cruel part. You think if you just reach the goal, if you just get the validation, you'll finally feel legitimate. But when you get there, if you get there, the emptiness is worse because now you have everything you thought you wanted and you still don't feel like yourself. You still don't feel at home in your own life. And that's when people have breakdowns or midlife crises or sudden radical changes that confuse everyone around them. It's not that they're being impulsive or irresponsible. It's that they finally can't ignore the truth anymore. Jung called this the confrontation with the self, the moment when the ego's plans and the self's direction can no longer be reconciled. Something has to give, and usually what gives is the false life, the persona, the carefully constructed image. It falls apart not because you're weak, but because it was never sustainable. You can only live a lie for so long before the truth demands its space. You might also notice that your goals don't integrate with the rest of your life. They exist in a separate compartment, something you're supposed to work on in your spare time or when you're disciplined enough. But they don't flow naturally from who you are and how you live. They feel like an addition, an extra burden, rather than an expression of what's already alive in you. When a goal is truly yours, it doesn't feel separate from your life. It emerges from your life. It's connected to your values, your interests, your natural way of being in the world. Think about the people you admire who seem genuinely fulfilled. Their work, their relationships, their daily choices all seem to flow from the same source. There's coherence. There's integrity in the literal sense, a wholeness. They're not compartmentalized. They're not performing one version of themselves at work, and another at home, and another online. They're integrated. And that integration comes from living from the inside out, from allowing their external life to be shaped by their internal truth, rather than trying to force their internal experience to match external expectations. When your goals are borrowed, you're always trying to fit yourself into them rather than letting them emerge from you. You're trying to become someone else's version of successful, someone else's version of healthy, someone else's version of good. And it's exhausting because it's a constant process of self-negation. You have to ignore or suppress the parts of yourself that don't fit the image. You have to pretend not to want what you want and to want what you don't. And your psyche rebels against this. It has to. Rebellion is its way of trying to save you from a life that will never feel like home. There's also the experience of relief when plans fall through. You were supposed to go to that event, but it got canceled. You were supposed to start that program, but something came up. You were supposed to meet that deadline, but circumstances intervened. And yes, part of you is disappointed or frustrated, but there's also this unmistakable sense of relief, of a burden lifting, of getting a reprieve. And you might feel guilty about that relief, but it's actually valuable information. It's telling you that some part of you didn't want to do that thing in the first place. Jung talked about how the unconscious will arrange circumstances to prevent us from continuing down wrong paths. He called it the psychoid nature of the unconscious, its ability to influence not just our internal experience, but also external events. Now, you don't have to believe in that literally to recognize the pattern. How often have you noticed that when you're forcing something that isn't right, obstacles keep appearing? And when you're aligned with something true, even if it's difficult, things seem to flow more easily. Not always, not magically, but there's a different quality to the challenge. It feels like you're working with something rather than against everything. When your goals aren't yours, you're working against yourself. And that means you're also working against the natural flow of your life. Everything becomes harder than it needs to be because you're swimming upstream, trying to force a direction that isn't organic to who you are. And the exhaustion of that, the constant effort with minimal progress, eventually breaks you down. Not because you're weak, but because you're trying to do something that was never meant for you. Another aspect of this is the way you feel about rest. When you're pursuing borrowed goals, rest feels like failure. It feels like falling behind, like losing ground, like evidence that you're not committed enough or strong enough. You can't enjoy it. You can't be present in it. It's tainted by guilt and anxiety. But when you're aligned with your actual path, rest feels necessary and nourishing. It's part of the rhythm, not an interruption. You can let yourself stop without the constant inner voice telling you you're not doing enough. This relationship with rest is actually a profound indicator of alignment. If you can't rest without guilt, if every moment of not doing feels like a moral failing, it's worth asking what you're really working toward and why it demands such constant sacrifice. Real work, meaningful work, work that comes from the soul, has its own rhythm. It includes rest. It includes fallow periods. It includes times of not knowing and not doing. But borrowed goals don't allow for that because they're driven by external pressure, by comparison, by the fear that if you stop, you'll be left behind or revealed as inadequate. You might also notice a disconnect between your stated priorities and where your energy actually goes. You say your goal is one thing, but when you look at how you spend your time, your attention, your resources, they're going somewhere else entirely. And you tell yourself you need to be more disciplined, more focused. But what if the problem isn't discipline? What if your energy is going where it actually wants to go, and the stated goal is just a story you're telling yourself because it sounds right? Energy doesn't lie. You can lie to yourself with words, with intentions, with plans. But your energy, your actual life force, goes where it's genuinely called. If you say your priority is building a business, but all your energy goes into your garden, that's information. If you say your priority is career advancement, but all your energy goes into your relationships, that's information. The disconnect isn't a problem to be solved through better time management. It's a message to be received about what actually matters to you. Jung would say that the self is trying to express itself through your natural inclinations, your spontaneous interests, the things that draw you without effort. But the ego, influenced by all its conditioning and fears and social pressures, tries to override that with goals that look better, that seem more acceptable, that promise security or status or approval. And the conflict between these two creates the experience of being stuck, of being unmotivated, of feeling like you're failing at life when really you're just failing at someone else's life. There's also often a fantasy element to borrowed goals. You don't really want the goal itself. You want what you imagine the goal will give you. You want the feeling you think you'll have, the person you think you'll become, the way you think your life will finally be okay once you achieve it. But if you're honest, really honest, you can't actually picture yourself living that life day to day. You can picture the moment of achievement, the validation, the relief of finally being enough. But the actual daily reality of it, that's blank. Or worse, it's unappealing. This is different from normal uncertainty. When a goal is truly yours, you might not know exactly how it will unfold, but you can feel into it. You can imagine yourself in the process, in the work of it. And there's something in you that says yes, even to the difficult parts. But with borrowed goals, you can only imagine the endpoint, the external markers, and even those feel hollow when you really sit with them. You might try this as an experiment. Take one of your major goals and really visualize it. Not just the achievement moment, but the life you'd be living once you have it. What does your day look like? How do you feel in your body? What are you doing? Who are you with? And as you sit with that image, notice what comes up. Excitement, aliveness, or anxiety, emptiness, a sense of is that all? Your body will tell you the truth if you're willing to listen. Another sign is the way you relate to failure. When you fail a goal that's truly yours, it hurts, but it doesn't destroy your sense of self. You can learn from it, adjust, try again. The failure is about the specific attempt, not about your worth as a person. But when you fail a borrowed goal, it feels existential. It feels like proof that you're not enough, that you'll never be enough, that something is fundamentally wrong with you. And that's because the goal was never really about the thing itself. It was about trying to become acceptable, trying to earn your place, trying to fix some perceived inadequacy. So failure at the goal feels like failure at being human. This is why borrowed goals are so psychologically dangerous. They tie your sense of worth to achievements that don't actually reflect who you are. And no matter how much you achieve, it never feels like enough because the real need, the need for self-acceptance, for living from your truth, isn't being met. You're trying to solve an internal problem with external solutions, and it can't work. Jung wrote about the process of individuation, of becoming who you actually are rather than who you think you should be. And he was clear that this process often requires letting go of goals and identities that serve you at one point, but no longer fit. It requires a kind of death, a shedding of the false self. And that's terrifying because we've invested so much in that false self. We've built our lives around it. We've told everyone that's who we are. And admitting that it was never really us feels like failure, like wasted time, like having to start over. But Jung would say it's not starting over. It's starting for real. Everything that came before wasn't wasted. It was necessary. You had to live the false life long enough to recognize it as false. You had to pursue the borrowed goals long enough to feel the emptiness of them. That's how you learn discernment. That's how you develop the capacity to tell the difference between what's yours and what's not. And once you have that capacity, once you've woken up to the truth of your own misalignment, you can't go back to sleep. You can try. You can tell yourself to just push through, just be grateful, just make it work. But your psyche won't let you. It will keep withdrawing energy, keep creating symptoms, keep making it impossible to continue until you finally listen. The listening is the hard part because it requires admitting things you don't want to admit. It requires facing the possibility that you've been wrong about what you want, about who you are, about what will make you happy. It requires disappointing people, changing course, letting go of investments of time and energy and identity. It requires sitting with the uncertainty of not knowing what comes next, of not having a clear goal to work toward while you figure out what's actually true for you. But there's also something deeply relieving about this process. When you stop trying to motivate yourself toward goals that aren't yours, when you stop berating yourself for not wanting what you think you should want, there's a spaciousness that opens up, a quietness, a sense of coming back to yourself. You might not know what you want yet, but you know what you don't want, and that's a start. You know what feels dead and what feels alive, and that's enough to begin with. The practice, if there is one, is simple but not easy. It's the practice of noticing, of paying attention to your actual experience rather than your ideas about your experience. When you're doing something, notice how it feels in your body. Notice whether you're leaning in or pulling back. Notice the quality of your energy. Notice whether you're thinking about how it looks or whether you're actually present in it. Notice the difference between should and want, between obligation and desire, between performance and authenticity. You might start writing about this, not in a structured way, not trying to figure anything out, but just recording what you notice. What gave you energy today? What drained you? What did you do that felt like you, and what felt like a role you were playing? Over time, patterns will emerge. You'll start to see where your real life is trying to happen and where you've been forcing something that doesn't fit. You might also practice sitting with the discomfort of not having goals, at least for a while. We're so conditioned to always be working towards something, always improving, always striving. But there's wisdom in the fallow time, in the not knowing, in the space between one way of being and whatever comes next. If you can tolerate that space without rushing to fill it with new goals, just to feel productive, something organic can emerge. Something true. Jung believed that the psyche is self-regulating, that it naturally moves toward wholeness if we don't interfere too much. But we do interfere. We interfere with all our ideas about who we should be, all our fears about what will happen if we're just ourselves, all our borrowed goals and adopted dreams. And the interference creates the stuckness, the lack of motivation, the sense that something is deeply wrong, when actually the only thing wrong is that we're not living our own lives. This doesn't mean you have to quit everything and start over. It doesn't mean your current life is entirely false or that you've been completely off track. Most lives are a mixture of what's true and what's borrowed. The work is in sorting through, in distinguishing, in gradually letting go of what doesn't fit and making space for what does. It's a process, not a single decision. And it requires patience with yourself, Compassion for how hard it is to unlearn everything you've been taught about what you should want. You might find, as you do this work, that some of your goals were actually yours all along, just buried under layers of should and performance. When you strip away the external pressure, the comparison, the need for validation, there's still something there that genuinely calls to you. That's worth honoring. But you might also find that other goals fall away completely, and what's left is something you never expected, something that doesn't make sense to anyone else but feels deeply right to you. That's worth honoring too. The point isn't to have the right goals, or the most authentic goals, or the most impressive goals. The point is to live from the inside out, to let your life be an expression of who you actually are rather than a performance of who you think you should be. And when you do that, motivation isn't something you have to manufacture. It arises naturally from alignment, from the sense that what you're doing matters to you. Not because it looks good or earns approval, but because it's real. Jung said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not who you were told to be, not who would be easiest or most acceptable, but who you actually are beneath all the conditioning and fear and borrowed dreams. And that becoming requires letting go of the false, even when the false has been comfortable, even when it's all you've known. It requires trusting that there's something real underneath, something worth uncovering, even if you can't see it yet. So if you've been feeling unmotivated, if nothing seems to move you, if you can't make yourself care about the goals you've set, maybe that's not a problem to be solved. Maybe it's information to be received. Maybe your psyche is trying to tell you something important, trying to redirect you, trying to save you from wasting more of your life on paths that were never yours to begin with. And maybe the kindest thing you can do for yourself right now is to stop trying to fix your lack of motivation and start listening to what it's telling you. This listening requires courage because it might reveal that you need to change things, let things go, disappoint people, admit you were wrong. But it also offers something that no amount of achievement on the wrong path can give you. The sense of being at home in your own life, of recognizing yourself and your choices, of feeling that what you're doing actually matters because it's connected to something true in you. If this resonates with you, if you've recognized yourself in any of what I've shared, I invite you to sit with it. Don't rush to fix anything or figure out your new goals or make big changes. Just sit with the recognition. Let it be uncomfortable. Let it be clarifying. Notice what comes up when you allow yourself to consider that maybe, just maybe, the reason nothing motivates you is because you've been trying to live a life that isn't yours. And notice what happens in your body when you consider the possibility of letting that go, of starting to listen to what's actually true for you, even if you don't know yet what that means or where it leads. The path forward isn't about finding the right goal to replace the wrong ones. It's about developing a different relationship with yourself, one based on listening rather than forcing, on honoring rather than overriding, on truth rather than performance. And from that relationship, from that ground of authenticity, your real life can begin to emerge. Not the life you think you should want, but the one that's actually yours. If you found something valuable in this, if it helped you see your experience in a new way, I'd be grateful if you'd like this video and subscribe to the channel. And if you feel moved to, share in the comments what this brought up for you. Not what you're going to do about it, but just what you noticed, what you recognized. Sometimes naming the truth is enough. Sometimes that's where everything begins.